Good morning. All right, if you have not found your seat yet, please take it, find it, and take it.
Nhớ xong thôi sáng chú trong sáng cứ biết tông chí mình xin tụ nè. Trong sáng cứ lúc nào mới chỉ đã cá mới chỉ hỏi đã cá tôi cổng bé.
Are you pumped? Are you excited? All right. So we're so excited. I know how many of you guys attended some of the workshops this morning as well? Okay, good. I want to say this, and I want to stress, particularly the young students. We have a young lady who, well, we have a lot of young people in the audience, and 200 of you are sponsored by this organization. The head, this person is going to speak to you guys in a bit. So take advantage of that. Someone paid for your dreams of being here. All right, so be excited, attend every workshop, and ask lots of questions.
Along that, we want to make sure that everybody is filling out those evaluations because those evaluations are really good and important feedback for all of us. So please, when you attend those workshops, fill out those evaluations. Also, in your booklet, in your binders or booklet folders, there is a final evaluation. Please fill it out. That actually evaluation, the final evaluation, can even qualify you for a $50 gift certificate. So please fill it out. We have boxes. I believe it's outside and also upstairs. Please drop them off. Your feedback is really important to the success of our conference.
All right, so you want to start?
So as we get into this session, we have been building our Friday afternoon plenary on key areas of success and celebration. In this session, we will take us into a deeper journey to explore how we embrace the Hmong values, but also changes as our community identity gets increasingly complex. Expert panelists today will explore the intersection and tensions of addressing issues such as race, gender, sexuality, domestic abuse, domestic violence, and incarceration. Achieving our community's full potential means we must pave new paths when it comes to dealing with increasingly complex, value-based challenges that makes all of us question where the essence of being Hmong is. So to start off, we actually have a very special opening here from Speaker of the Sun, our Chile, Tia Lor, and Kevin Yang. They will be performing 1.5. They are a collection, or Speakers of the Sun is a collection of Asian American activists and spoken word artists in the Twin Cities who focus on cultivating artistic voice and providing a space for growth. Representing Speaker of the Sun are Chile, Lor, and Kevin Yang. Please give them a warm welcome.
All right, welcome everybody. Hope you're having a good morning. Let's start off by playing a little game. This is an easy game. Whenever I perform, I really see it as a conversation. It's not just us standing in front and talking to you. It's us talking to each other. And the only way we can do that is if I know all your names and I don't have time to shake all of your names, even though I'm going to shake all your hands, even though I'm going to try my best. What I'm going to do is I'm going to count from 1 to 3, and I want you to shout your names out as loud as possible. All right, that sound good? Sound good? All right, let's do that. All right. 1, 2, 3. I think I heard like my and 2 somewhere in there, so that's good. All right. But cool. We're going to be doing a piece called 1.5, and it's very much about our place in history in terms of the Hmong history, our place in time and that sort of thing, and trying to capture the complexity of that. I'm sure as you folks have been learning a lot about throughout the workshop, so we hope you enjoy it. Chile, do you have anything about it?
Bé họ những nhà dân nông nói giờ trâu cho lúa và bé giờ trong cái bé giờ nên mong,แต่是bé cứ giờ nên mình cả thế giờ.
Well said. All right.
They say we're stuck between the new
and the old,
traditional
and modern,
Hmong
and American.
As though we have to choose either side of the hyphen. I am Hmong American, rooted in Thailand but blossomed in the US. I'm a spiritual believer and a lover of Jesus. I am a rice eater and a consumer of Whoppers. So, is there a problem with that?
We eat our Kentucky Fried Chicken with
Mont Blanc,
hamburgers dipped in
guozao,
and sriracha with everything. But we do not simply use our tongues for eating.
We have become walking dictionaries.
Human handheld translators.
The only recognizable voice in the room expected to speak proper English, like...
Salutations, everyone, on this momentous morning as we all congregate to engage in this visual discourse we colloquially know as hip-hop, or...
making sure that we hit every tone of every Hmong word, as though every sentence was being critiqued by our grandmothers, as though every conversation was a pageant, like, 鸟上错令错读，我唱能到我内情顿到，被讲给了人女呢，还做 hip hop。
But more often falling somewhere in between, which brings us to Hmonglish.
It is the process of combining an English word with a Hmong worldview in hopes of building the bridge between two worlds.
But more often confusing everyone involved. For example, basimen,
Basement,
inshallah,
insurance,
bisi,
Pepsi, or any other sugary beverages.
GK, shalas, J,
More,
they,
which translates to
never mind. We are thrown into ESL in the 3rd grade.
We forget how to speak to our grandmothers.
We are told to lose our accents.
We are asked for second language proficiencies on our job applications.
I'm sorry, but I cannot split my tongue like I'm asked to split my identity. Why can't I keep them both?
Our generation is not always so nice. Our generation has an identity crisis because we are next in line to receive and to pass down Hmong, but it slips from our hand like quicksand. So by the time it reaches our kids, how much left will be in their hands? Our generation are not meeting to graduation rates the way our folks hoped when they left their old world in faith.
We've been told that our generation is stuck, crushed in between the weight of American whiteness and the Hmongness of our ancestors, not entirely either, which cannot be any more true because we are our own, finding space where space is impossible. It's not just eating hot dogs with our rice.
Not just speaking Hmong with an accent.
But pushing past highways.
Remembering mountaintops.
Becoming the next generation of doctors and lawyers.
Priests and shamans,
sons and daughters. And when our children ask us how we lived our lives,
we tell them generation 1.5.
For those who are just walking in, you missed it. Next time, get here a little early. So, without any further ado, I do want to prepare you for this next speaker to capture the theme for today. Again, she's broken a lot of barriers. She does have a brief intro, but I also want to add a personal note too. Sue Van is the president and CEO of the Wallace H. Culture Foundation. Circle it in your program and Google it later. You'll learn the history and the impact of this foundation. Prior to establishing the foundation, she was the executive vice president and CFO of Culture Corporation, a leading global diagnostics company. She was born in Shanghai, China, and immigrated to the U.S. at the age of 5, like many of us. And Sue earned a BA in political science from American University, a master's in international affairs from George Washington University. But more importantly, she's a little lady, but with huge accomplishments. She's broken not only the bamboo barrier, right? But the glass ceiling, the bamboo ceiling, but the glass ceiling. She's one of a few Asian American women doing the type of work that she does. And let me share with you, her organization or foundation in the past 15 years or so has given over $500 million. That's $500 million to create change throughout the world. So not only a dream maker, but a dream builder, but a dream maker. So please help me welcome to the stage, Sue Van.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. This is my first Hmong conference. Okay. And I have to be honest, I didn't know anything about the Hmong community until I saw Clint Eastwood's The Gran Torino. So sorry about that, but ever since I've heard about this community, ever since I learned about it from the movie, I have been fascinated by this community. I don't know if you know or understand the level of accomplishment that this community has accomplished and achieved in the last 40 years. You are here to celebrate your 40 years, but do you know what you're celebrating? You have probably been more successful and achieved more official positions, have more PhDs than any other ethnicity in the API, Asian American Pacific Islander group that I know of. So I'm fascinated and I'm awed at your uniqueness and your difference, and of course, your similarities to the bigger community. So I came here to listen and learn, and I know that we have a session later with the students, so we can talk about everybody else later. But I'm here to listen and learn. I have two members of my team here, if they would get up. Believe it or not, they're of the Van clan, okay? One is my sister, Susie, and we'll have to explain why our names are similar later. She's the vice president of the Asian American program in my foundation. I believe, at least I'm told, that we are the only foundation in the country with an Asian American Pacific Islander program, and we'll get into that later. The second, the young man you see is my youngest brother. His name is Dennis Van, and like most Asian families, they stopped after they got the son. So, okay. So, why are they part of the foundation? Because we are the only foundation with an Asian program, and I thought, what better experience and opportunity for the Van clan to give back to this community and to give that opportunity of giving back and learning about this community than my family. You see, when we came here, I came here in 1952, there were less than 20,000, primarily Chinese, in New York. There were less than 200,000 Chinese, Japanese, Koreans in the entire United States. And why was that? Because of the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act. So the immigration from the Far East really did not start until after 1965, an Immigration Reform Act, and maybe much more after the Vietnam War. So in reality, I sort of grew up alone in the Catskill Mountain area of New York. So I grew up Jewish, and that's why I like matzah much more than I like rice. So I'm here to listen and learn about this community, but I want you to know that I got adopted already. So, and Dennis got his called Dennis Van, and I've just been adopted to one of your clans, okay? So let me explain a little bit who I am and why I'm here and what on earth do I do, right? Okay, I think that I already got a little bit addressed regarding corporate America. Yes, I became the CFO and executive vice president of this wonderful, fantastic global diagnostic company. But let me tell you who this diagnostic company is. Coulter Corporation. I guarantee you, each and every one of you have benefited from Wallace's technology. Because why? If you have a blood test, it has to be on our technology because there were no other inventions before his technology. People were able to do a blood test, but it was manual. And it could take anywhere between 30 to 45 to 60 minutes to do one blood test of one individual. So hospitals and clinics did several hundred a day. He automated that test so that it could be a 15-second test. That made blood cell testing affordable and accessible around the world, which basically created scientific medicine the way it is today. Basically saved millions and millions of lives, because can you imagine that if you can get the results of a blood test so that you understand what to treat, doing it days and hours earlier saved people's lives. So I guarantee you that each and every one of you and every member of your family that has a blood test, and you college students, get a blood test, okay? So that's one. Second, over 500 consumer products, whether it's toners, paint, moon dust, wine, beer, chocolate, cosmetic powder, all of these things also need the Coulter counter in their quality assurance step in the manufacturing process. So Wallace Coulter has benefited every single person on this planet, and every person in this world has been impacted by his technology. He was the benefactor to my foundation. And I often say to people, only in America, and only an American, would entrust his entire fortune, but more importantly, his legacy, to a Chinese woman immigrant. This would not happen in Europe or Latin America. It would not happen in China, because as we know, fortunes are passed down to generations and generations. That is only one indication of what each and every one of you can accomplish in America. I have learned a lot here so far, that the Hmongs have left mountainsides and crossed the ocean to their new home. This is your new home. If you have been looking for a country, if you've been looking for a permanent residency, if you have looked for something to claim as your own, then you, of all people, belong here in the United States. So please, take advantage of all the opportunities that you would not have in Laos, or in China, or in Cambodia, or in Vietnam. Take advantage of all the opportunities. Take some risks. Do some things that might be different. And if you ever have the chance to work in a private company, do so, because that is a totally different business world than the public companies today. So how do I explain Wallace? How unique was he as an individual, besides being a fantastic inventor and an entrepreneur and an innovator? Well, I joined his company in 1975, and in 1978, the company started having cash problems. We all know cash problems. So somebody with a financial attitude, I go, well, we can fix this financial problem by laying off workers. I think we should do that. I'm brand new, the company's 20 years old, they've never laid off anybody, so here's a smart aleck going like, well, I think we should lay off workers. So they go, okay, go ahead and talk to these division managers and get some information. So I came back after a few months, talked to all these 13, 15 division managers and said, okay, we need to lay off workers, so give me a list or give me names or give me money or whatever. So I went back and I met with him and his brother Joe, is owned by two brothers. And I said, look at all these numbers. If we laid off these people, we'll get all these numbers as a result. We'll save all this cash. And they said to me, well, you can't trust our division managers. You have no names behind that. So they can just make up anything. I said, oh, that makes sense. So go and get the name. So I went back, got all these names from all these people, and I came back and I said, okay, I got this list. It's about 450 people. If we lay these people off, we should be able to save money, and the company should not be able to get into trouble. So they said, well, you can't just give me a bunch of names. You have to find out, do they own a house or do they rent? Do they have kids in college? I go, okay. Since I never laid off anybody, I thought, well, okay, that must be important information. So I went back and I found out from all these division managers' names, and I found all these personal histories. And I came back and I said, okay, I'm ready to lay off people. And they go, you can't do that. you have to find out, a lot of our employees are immigrants from Cuba. We were in Miami. They said, you have to find out that these people send money home, because then we would not only impact them here, but we would also impact them in Cuba. I'm going, really? So I went back and I had to talk to these people. I knew more about these people than I knew about my own family. So finally, I come back and I go, okay, if we wait any longer, we'll get into bankruptcy problems and we don't have to lay off anybody, because everybody will be laid off. So I said, okay, come on, let's do it. So we had 450 names on the list. They went through every single name, took us days. But I was smart because I knew everything. So finally, after days, from 450 names on the list, they agreed to 50 people. I'm going, 50 people? All the work I just did for months and months and months for 50 people? And they said, yes, that's enough. So since they never laid off anybody, they came up with the most generous severance package you can imagine. It was so fantastic, I begged to be laid off, okay? So, but I was really, you have to understand how impressed I was, because everybody said to me, Sue, no one's ever gotten Wallace and Joe to do that. Boy, you must be a real superstar. So I'm like, oh, wow, man, I really got a reputation here. So we came up with a severance package. These 50 people got laid off, and I'm like, really superstar here. A couple weeks later, I see people walking across the street. A couple weeks later, I see other people walking across the street. So I go to personnel and I go, I don't know if it's my imagination, but I see people that we laid off. They all started laughing. And they said, Sue, we hate to tell you this, but you know the 50 people that you got Wallace to lay off? He hired every single one of them back. And he let them keep their severance, and he gave them a raise. So I went, okay. That was a very expensive lesson, wasn't it? And from then on, like any other company, we had our hard times or our tough times, but any time we had a restructuring and any time we had a reorganization, we went to our subsidiaries and we had the biggest, widest distribution organization in the world in our business, which was the healthcare industry. And we would talk to people face to face. We would never send a pink slip. We talked to people face to face. We explained why we had to do some downsizing, what it would do, what impact would people feel, and how we were going to take care of them. That was a very, very expensive lesson, but it was a lesson that I never forgot. And in 1995, when the younger brother, Joe, passed away from prostate cancer, and I knew, because medically proven, that when people are close, you lose the other partner within 24 months, plus or minus. I had to do something about the company before Wallace passed away. And what we did was Joe's family and I went around the world. I myself went to China and Japan and Australia and South Africa and Hong Kong to explain why the company had to be sold and why the family was not going to continue this. A 40-year private company, ladies and gentlemen. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how powerful you have to be? Do you know what market position you have to hold to stay 40 years private and not need Wall Street and not need other investors? Very powerful. Like #1 in the world for over 50 years, even 10 years after the passing of the founders. That's how powerful this company was. So we had to sell it to ensure that our employees and our customers would be taken care of. So this is the kind of man that exists in America. And this is the kind of man that gave me his entire fortune so that I have the honor and the privilege of investing in people like yourselves. And we always say in the Coulter Foundation, we do not give away grants. We invest. We invest, we expect a partnership, we expect full collaboration, and we expect results. So I have to tell you, you Hmong community really ahead, because you already got fantastic results. So let me tell you a little bit about the Asian American program. I stumbled upon it. Like I said, I did not grow up with this community. I don't really know and understand all the issues of this community. I don't necessarily agree with all the issues of this community. But what I heard was a very simple word. I found out that during the census that there would not be any support for this community. 20 years ago, there was a study by a foundation supporting this community, less than 1%. 20 years later today, unfortunately, that is still true. So there was no financial support for this community to get counted in 2010 census. And the fact that you would not be counted would mean millions and millions of lost support from the federal government, whether it's to build schools, transportation, public libraries, whatever. All this community would be missing a lot of support. So I said to Stuart Quo, which some of you know, why doesn't this community get the support? I don't understand that. Don't they need it? And he said, yes, but we're always excluded. He says, we're invisible, we have no voice, and we have no seat at the table. I understood the word exclusion because when you're the only and the first women, Chinese, Asian, whatever, you're always excluded. So I understand the pain of exclusion. And I said, okay, Stuart, we will fund the census. And we were the only foundation in the country that got the money out in 30 and 60 days. Checks went to over 150 to 200 community-based organizations like yourselves. And we have been investing in the Hmong community since the 2010 census. So from there, we created a program, and unfortunately, or fortunately, most of the time, many times, we're the only foundation supporting this community. So we invest in citizenship. We were the biggest foundation in the country helping Asians get enrolled in the Affordable Care Act. There was a lot of money out there for Latinos, African Americans, and I can understand that because there's critical mass. The funders just thought this community was too complicated, too many languages, too complex, too fragmented to be able to get a return on the investment. What, Asians don't need insurance? I think we all know that's a very big problem in our community. So we became the only foundation that supported this in the country. And I thought about this, and I thought, you know, Coulter can wind up spending a lot of money, a lot of time, but unfortunately, there's only one Coulter. And we intend to sunset. That's why we spent $500 million in the last 15 years. So I thought, if we keep investing Wallace's money and we accomplish nothing, in other words, your sustainability, then to be candid, I have wasted Wallace's money, and I will not do that. So we changed our scope on the API program, and we decided to invest in comprehensive civic engagement. And what does that mean? That means we care about who have visas. We will help make them become citizens, incorporate the ESL. Then we will help them get registered. Then we will help them get educated. And then we will get out the vote. Because the biggest message that this community can make is, in fact, the power of the vote. We're very, very lucky in America because some of us come from countries that, number one, there is no vote, whether it's a military government, whether it's a dictator or whatever, or one political party. We come from countries that it didn't matter if you voted. We come from countries that if you voted, you probably got targeted to get killed. But we are very lucky in America, and voting is the greatest equalizer in this country. And what does that mean? Because many of you might say, who cares about my vote? I'm only one person, who cares? Well, let me assure you, ladies and gentlemen, we care, and you should care. Because the voting booth is the only place in America where somebody on Medicaid is equal to a millionaire or a billionaire. Because only in the voting booth does a high school dropout is equal to the PhD. And the voting booth is the only place in America that a domestic violence victim is equal to her abuser. You tell me what other country gives you that power that you can incorporate in voting. And the other thing that you should all know, the African American community has suffered great tragedies and great struggles and deaths and beatings and everything to win us the right to vote. For those of us who are able to vote, if we do not do so, we have shirked our responsibility of what it is to be an American. Because you have no right to complain about what's wrong if you don't care enough to go and vote. So, the Coulter's Comprehensive Program, we decided that we were going to sunset in 2018, a few years after Wallace's 100th birthday. Wallace was so humble and so private and so modest that there's nothing written about him. The only information you can get about Wallace is really in our website. And maybe a textbook that says Wallace Coulter was the inventor of the Coulter Principle. But that's really it. There's no books, there's no articles, there's no interviews. So the only thing was, I thought a man like that should not pass away without the world being reminded how much they benefited from him. So in 2013, we made a tribute video, which you can see on our website, that tells you all these people that were so happy to be able to say something about him and what he accomplished. He is so accomplished that the Smithsonian Institute, I hope you will all have the privilege to visit, in Washington, D.C., is dedicating in their brand new American Business Enterprise exhibit on the bottom of their West Wing. They're doing a transformative renovation of new exhibits about American democracy, American immigration, and what it is to be an American, together with American business. And Wallace is going to be one of two people, Wallace and his invention, and Herb Boyer of Genentech are the two people that are being showcased in the medical component of that exhibit. So please, when you're in DC, go stop by and go get counted, because they have a mechanism that if you walk through, you get counted, okay? So I wanted you to know a little bit about Wallace. I wanted you to know how unique he was. But to be candid, America's unique. You know, America's a nation that's basically innovation. It's an experiment. It was the only country in the world that the people decided to govern themselves and not have a monarchy. We are an experiment here. And you are an experiment because you're part of a small community. The Hmong community, about 265,000, let's say, from 2013 data, is one of the smaller communities in the Asian American community. So you might say, well, what does that mean? Well, let me share with you my personal journey. In 2010, when I started the census, people would say, so where are you from, Sue? And I would say, I'm American, born in China. In 2011, I would say, I'm Chinese American. So I became power of 4 million. Because what I learned was that all my years of success and all my accomplishments, I was only always the power of 1. And yes, I have a voice, and yes, I am visible, and yes, I have a seat at the table. I'm still only the power of 1. So in 2011, I decided I should be Chinese American, because that was the power of 4 million. 2012, I decided, I should be Asian American. Because if I become Asian American, I'll have the power of 17, 18 million. In 2013, I decided to be 18 million. I was going to be Asian American and Pacific Islander. And in 2014, to me, I think I reached the pinnacle of my learning of this community. And I decided to be Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander, and that's 20 million community. So I want to congratulate you on your 40th anniversary. I think what you have accomplished, this small community of 265,000 in 40 years, has simply been amazing to me. And I need you to lead and to show us, because you are a special microcosm of the entire AAPI community. The Asian community now has a visibility. We know now how many people we are. And we also know, and the rest of America knows, that we are the fastest growing minority in the United States. But who cares if we are the fastest growing minority in the United States if we, in fact, do not leverage it or capitalize on it? So, until and unless this 20 million community gets a voice and a seat at the table, it doesn't really matter how successful, how wealthy, how resourced individually we are, because we are only the power of one. So I'm asking this Hmong community, who have accomplished so much in the last 40 years, that as you go forth to your next 40-year journey, that you remember that we are the best of the East and the West, and we have a lot to carry over from our heritage and our culture, whether it be Chinese for me or Hmong for you. And let us contribute and do the best we can for America, because we are, at the end of the day, our contributions and our opportunities are greatest in America. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Wow. Let's give her another round of applause, huh? And thank you for sponsoring 200 of our students who are here today. So if you guys came here on an investment, not a grant, but an investment, make sure you thank your investor, all right?
And I think for that, from what I got out of that is that you matter, because the reason you matter, that is why you are invested in. So make sure this year, this coming year, if you're eligible, you can go out and vote. Your vote matters.
Also, Sue will be meeting with the college students. Take advantages 5 to 6 p.m. today.
Write it down.
Great River Rooms 2 and 3. So please definitely go on there, learn how you can be in a position to give away millions and billions of dollars someday.
Okay, with that said, we're continuing the conversation, Crossroad and Bridges, paving a new path of leadership. I'm excited to introduce to you a good friend of mine who also will be moderating this session. Ms. Bao Tao Urbe, I can pronounce her last name, Urabe, is a social entrepreneur and community builder with over 20 years of leadership experience. She currently serves as a senior director at Asian American Pacific Islander in Philanthropy, AAPIP, where she leads innovative initiatives that leverage community and philanthropic access to advance social justice. Bao also serves as Director of Coalition of Asian American Leaders, CAAL, an effort to harness the leadership of Asian Minnesotan leaders to advance equity. Finally, she is the Chief Operating Officer for Red Green River, and one of our sponsors today, that the prizes that will be given away, a social enterprise to improve the economic livelihood of artisans from Mekong region of Southeast Asia. Bao lives experience of war, immigration, poverty, and gender-based oppression have driven her to continuously develop community-centered, asset-based approaches that ensure community are fully able to participate in, contribute to, and shape our democracy regardless of identity and history. Please at this time help me welcome Ms. Bao.
Hi, everyone. How are we doing? Good. Sue, I'm so glad you're Hmong now. That makes you my aunt because my mom's a Vang. So thank you all for, we're trying to kind of figure out this because we were really hoping to have a panel discussion, and now that the panelists can't see each other, they're going to have to kind of guess their own responses. So thank you for letting me participate in moderating the session. As you all know, this is the 40th anniversary of the uproot of many Southeast Asians as a result of the Vietnam and the Secret War in Laos and Vietnam. And so while we are all celebrating our history, there are many communities who are also celebrating their stories and really talking about the future. So we have much to celebrate, and I hope that all of you will return home and take the opportunity of the 40th year anniversary to be able to share your own family stories. I can't tell you how many people just are afraid to still share their stories because they feel like there's already a narrative there. People already have exhibits or stories and things like that. But, you know, our community, everybody's story is as diverse as the number of people who are in this room. And I think it's really important not to just let other people dictate what is happening in our community, but that for all of us, no matter what age, to be able to talk about that. So I know you have probably visited the Minnesota History exhibit, and it's a great exhibit, and I hope you have a chance to visit, but also to continue to really think about how we reflect on these 40 years, because as Sue has said, for our community, it has represented the most significant advancement for our population. So this leads me to this panel, and I have the pleasure of moderating the next hour for us to talk a little bit differently than some of the other sessions that you've participated in, to not just talk about specific skills, but to be able to pause for a moment and to contemplate what our Hmong identity is going to mean in the next 40 years. And the premise for our panel is that we don't simply accept that being Hmong is already defined, right? But that as we evolve as an American population, and then as Hmong people globally, that we take the time to really think about what it means to be Hmong in the context of America and then in the world. So Sue, we're 12 million globally, so, so that's also the community that we are part of. And really to just also pause for a moment and to think about what leadership means, and that we don't simply assume that leadership are the people who rise up and call themselves leaders, but that, as Wallace Coulter demonstrated from your stories, Sue, that leaders are people who are principled and have values. And ultimately, it's what they do that counts. It's not what they say that matters. So when we think about the future, we're really trying to think about how do we really maximize the full potential of our community? How do we make sure that we are tapping into all the people that make up our community? And with me today are people who I think some of you know and some of you may not know, but they're also people who we sometimes overlook when we think about leadership. But to me, they're really leaders in thinking about what it means to be value-based leaders in the future. So as we think about this next path for our community and what it means, let's just take this moment to really reflect and learn from our past, but to also reimagine what it could mean for us to really fully tap into the potential of our whole community. So we're going to structure the next hour really as a discussion. We have some questions, and we will try to make sure that everybody can respond to each of the questions. And I think I'm going to pull a chair because it would be odd for me to stand here for an hour for this discussion. So we won't take any questions, but because right after this is lunch, I'm going to encourage all of you to come up and have conversations with the panelists or ask questions that you may not have gotten to ask, okay? So I'm not going to introduce the panels very much because you have their bios, and as they each go, I've asked them to tell a little bit more about themselves than what's in the bio that they think is relevant. But with me on the panel today includes Gao Li Yang, who is somebody that I've always seen as, you know, for every challenge that I've had in my life, I think about the women who've gone before me, and Gao Li is one of those women. So she's somebody that I just think has done a tremendous amount of work in the community, for our community, and specifically for women, but has not always been someone that I think we think a lot about, but continues to this day to really think about what it means to be value-based. So she's going to share her thoughts. And then John Vang, who is a young man here with us, just doing really terrific work with young men, and in particular really thinking about young men who've made mistakes in their life and how they're reintegrating into the community. And then Gajova, who is over here, is the director of Freedom Inc., but most importantly, she's really a grassroots movement leader. And so, you know, with her is always people following her to push the boundaries and to really talk about what it means to not just fully embrace who we are as Hmong people, but in the context of being people of color in this country. And then Liana Yang, who is also with us, is going to talk about gender and how we understand the gender identity in our community, and how do we really have those complex conversations, but also think about how to include the LGBTQ community in our work. So I'm going to take a seat, and then I'll pose the question. And we're going to start off with Gao Li because she's our elder, and we still value wisdom. So I'm going to take this mic.
Okay. Yeah, if not, we can share.
Hello? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So we're going to start off with a question for Gao Li, and the question is just why is it valuable for you to be Hmong? Can you share a little bit about, for you, what are Hmong values? So I'll just...
Okay, thank you, Bo. Nhớ rong sẽ đỡ. Nhớ rong. Cú yo hai ô lùm Hmong ya, thia chế ý mình gì chế tới rồi yo Hmong English thia. So yo hai tia yo thầu tư cú hai chỉ cho tao tao nó là chế và để nó cú understand hai tia và trong đi tao United Nations ya trong đi bên mua chẳng hạn translator thia chỉ số. But you must have a mic or a phone to hear the translation. Okay, no? Okay, all right, so it's gonna be Hmonglish, so if you don't understand all of it, maybe half of it. All right, wonderful. And Bo had asked that we, introduce ourselves, just give you a little bit more information. And so I just wanted to start out by saying that that my name is Gao Li Yang, but my original clan was Vang. And then, as we start talking about this, I think that this whole clan system is also has a big role for us to play and for us to consider as we move forward into the future about the benefits and impact that our clan system has on our community. I am proud to say that I'm almost 60, so I appreciate you, referring me to me as an elder, and I would say that not too many culture would embrace this thing called being called elder, but I thank you for that. I consider that an honor. I am a proud grandmother of 4 beautiful grandchildren, and I have 3 children, and I've been married to my wonderful husband for 40 years. So I was one of those refugee bride, in the camp. We came directly to Minnesota in 1976, and we were the 3rd Hmong family resettled in Minnesota. So we believe that many of the first families have paved the ways for so many more Hmong families and relatives to join us in Minnesota, and have found Minnesota to be a home for everybody. And it's part of that Minnesota, nice, culture that we accidentally, were bumped into, and it has worked well for the Hmong community. I also just want to share that, my last 39 years have been in human service field, ranging from nonprofit organization to schools and to state and county offices, but has always been in the nonprofit, in the human service field. Gusa haimen jitia haitia wa ilang nia tia ya itu nia jetia wa holu tia. It's very, very difficult. But during my during that time, I've also managed to put myself through school. And it took a very long time because I'm from the old school where I believe that I have to save enough money to pay for the class before I can, I will take the class. And another reason is because I don't want to be a, burden to the family for what I consider my extra personal, expenses. So that is why it took me a long time, but by the time I finished, I'm glad to say that I did not have any school loan to pay back. Okay, and I also want to touch on the fact that back in 1979, that is like a couple, 2.5 years after we resettled in Minnesota, I'm proud to say that I was one of the co-founder of the Hmong Women Association of Hmong and Lao, along with 4 other very brave souls, some of my peers and, and relatives, who, were brave enough to, embark on this, mission with me. We got together and we wanted to form the organization because we recognized the importance of elevating Hmong women and girls' status in our new world. We recognize that we have opportunities here, but unless we rise up to the occasion and do something about it, we will miss out on this great opportunity. But the idea was not embraced by all. We were considered radical feminists, and we didn't even know what that meant. And we were considered anti-Hmong for pursuing such a mission. And so, a little bit later on, I'm going to share a little bit more about that. So to your questions, Bo, about some of the Hmong value that I embrace. And I think one of the greatest thing about our Hmong culture is our clan system. And I have to say, though, that it's one of those things that has a double edge. It's a double-edged sword. it works to help us, but it also impeded on our advancement. And again, we'll talk more about that. But what I like about our clan system is that it forced us to take greater responsibilities, not just for ourselves and our immediate family. It forced us at a very early age to think globally on how our actions impact others, how our action impacts not just our families, but our clan, and then the Hmong community. And I think that, we don't find too many of that in too many other cultures. And that is something that I highly value. The other thing is that we respect our elders. Now you call no Gupa to Hadia, near Iya had their own gungo, the call had their pay you Paulo Su, Jepin, a busy, la should a young clear pay had their Yoju, Nena Iya Naptu, near Tetzi, Yojum long your law. Konoya e cause on gungo, dear Shima, Lamuzolushi her no, pay it here Gupa, here had dear. Kono la ya e kho ha dia pe ya to kho ha dia mo te ya ne pa pe ta shima mo te ya li no ne ku wa nyo da pe tia bi sa li ha dia ya pe shi lo lu ha dia respecting elder na ya. For example, in our discussion today, basically the elder has the final say, and so all three of you really you can express your opinion, but the final say is going to be made by me, and I may lead you down the wrong path. So that's one of the challenge with some of our cultural value.
Okay, Nyojong, and I can speak probably English a little bit better than Hmong, so I will do my best. So a little bit about myself. I was born at the end of the war in 1975. This question about value, Hmong values, as you can see in a patriarchy community where Hmong boys may be more valued. And when you're born a girl, that already sets what kind of values are put on you. Not only that, when you're born at the end of the war, where there's such destruction and there's such loss in families, being a girl and being born that time was probably not the most valuable thing anyway. And then I was very sickly and malnutritioned. And so everything about who I am is very Hmong. And all of the things that are valuable about me is valuable in Hmong culture, right? And so I think that like when I look back at my life and I look back at being a Hmong daughter, a Hmong girl, that what value, and having the privileges of traveling throughout the world, I can tell you one of the things that's beautiful about being Hmong is no matter what village you go into, you recognize your own people. And that has nothing to do with gender. It's just you recognize your people from the beautiful things that we have, right? And so from the pandao that you can see that the women sew, to the jewelry, to the way that we welcome each other, these are the kind of things that are most valuable to Hmong people. To the love and respect of each other, no matter whose child you are, that you become that village child. And so traveling to Southeast Asia, I've been able to like really witness that. So I think that vì thế có một lúc tới chơi tới có một lúc rò men bộ lý cho là có một chụp lời xí vậy có bỏ từ lấy món chè là bỏ từ có món chè lời chi nào thử yêu thế yêu thằng là hai lù là rồi ngồi yêu bài bơ nè bây giờ chỉ không nói này yêu kho tầm món này rong hàng chỉ ta lên tới đó là cũng hết tuần sai đó là thầu yêu lo chè kho war ta tự anh á chỉ không nói chè yêu kho rong hàng cho kho tiền chè cũng hết tuần sai là cũng hết tuần sai món bây giờ. So I think that there's so many things that are beautiful about Hmong values, and there are things that we should keep, and then there are many, many things that I think that should change. And so I think that's all.
Hello? Okay. Nhớ rằng của John của hai lũ Hmong chỉ mình là nên tất cả. For me, values, I think chỉ think chấp lời for cụ chị ha, It's our family ties that makes us Hmong, and that's valuable because Gunda Lu Haneng Ta Du La Miga de La De Hollow and Church Up La De. How come Hmong people stick together? How come their families support each other so much? At 18, my mom and my dad, they kick me out of the house. Or my cousins, they don't support me like your cousins do. The Hmong people, they stick together. And it's us, it's our family ties that brings us together. And I think that's what's very important is our family values. It's knowing that when I have a family and kids in the future, that my mom is supportive of me and my dad is supportive of me. They're willing to take my kids in and help babysit because childcare is so expensive and crazy. But in our community, our parents, they support us. They help us take care of our kids so that we can provide and be successful. And for us, I think, for me, I value my history, knowing where we came from, knowing that once upon a time, long ago, Hmong people had their own kingdom. To rediscover that, to know that about myself, our history. It's not just our language, because once upon a time, our language was changed and lost as we migrated southward. You know, but we still think it's Hmong. And now we're here in America, we got Hmonglish, and pretty soon it changes and adapts. So just speaking Hmong doesn't make us Hmong. It's knowing our history and who we are and our family ties that brings a value to who we are and what makes us strong and what I value in being Hmong. So.
Okay. Hi everybody. I'm struggling whether I wanted to Hai Lu Hmong or speak in English. But I see some people here that may need me to speak English, so I'm gonna go with that. I'm happy to be here. I feel such a privilege for you all to accept me as a panelist for today, and I just really wanna thank you all for that. I'm up here in a capacity to discuss today gender dysphoria. But I do have experience working in the LGBTQ community as a counselor, which I currently am working over at Pride Institute right now. I'm a student at the University of Minnesota, and I'll be graduating in a couple weeks. So, thanks. But most importantly, I just feel that I really hope that you all get some knowledge or something useful from me after this paneling thing is over. And if you all feel like you want to ask me more questions, please feel free to come approach me. But the question was, what was it again, Bo?
Why is it valuable for you to identify as being Hmong, and what do you think Hmong values are?
Well, I think that's a good question. For me, I do identify as a Hmong person because that's who I am. I respect myself. And there's no other way around that in my mind. I think a lot of the things that we have in our culture is really beautiful with regards to like our traditions, the music, the food, the way in which the family dynamics work with regards to loving and caring for each other. Those are the things that I value. I also value cultural preservation. But what I value the most is the future of the Hmong people. I think that supersedes everything else about what we currently do as a culture. So that's why I identify as Hmong.
Great, thank you. So often when we have these conversations, people talk about why we need to talk about them. And I think as Hmong Americans, we globally have a responsibility to talk about it because of the privileges that we have in this country. We travel. We actually just came back from Southeast Asia and had meetings with Hmong people from China, Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, and it is uniquely American to be able to talk about Hmong identity, but also to talk about what it means to be Hmong in sort of all its complexities. And not only that, but because we have the privilege of living in a country where we travel freely, we get to go and have these conversations, and we have to create space. And so I think we are able to talk about things that other Hmong people in other countries are not able to talk about. And also, what I really hear often is that what we do as Hmong Americans sets the standard for how Hmong people in the world feel like they are going to be able to achieve, right? So we may not want this responsibility, but everybody sort of is looking to see what's happening here. So I think that Liana brings up a good point about we keep having this conversation where people think, well, are we gonna change or are we gonna preserve, right? And I think that's really a false dichotomy, because change is gonna happen whether we want it to or not. The question is, what are we going to, how are we going to intentionally change so that we are taking forth the things that are most valuable to us as Hmong people. So my next question for you on the panel is, what do you think are some moral dilemmas that we're facing as a community now? We talk a lot about problems, and we don't talk about some of these dilemmas that are facing the community, and it's maybe the reason why we have so many unhealthy social media conversations versus constructive conversations on problem solving. And why do you think it matters that we, those of us in this room, but also those who are outside of this room, talk about them in order for us to really achieve our full potential? John, can you start?
Sure. So if you read my bio, you know I've been incarcerated and you know, cú này cú chỉ khai cú quan hình giống, ta chỉ thầu cú lo to chỉ cú cho chỉ cho cú mua lái cú mua chim lọc cú này cú chỉ hay, and then họ tàu cơ chỉ you know ít tu lúa mong cho to vì hệ tiệt cú chỉ chơi cho, and cho cú sa tu xem một giờ là cú you know sa hệ tiệt I'm sorry cú watch story cha ya show hate ku sorry la hate ku tu share ma ja hate ku watch story tu neng le ta ka to nu chen neng na, but I kha ku pa tho ku to ka ya vì hate bây giờ tu thế chân sai mong nó wo to chi ya, and when we do something wrong, the men and the women in our community, when we do something wrong, there is no way for us to redeem ourselves, because among the way we do things in our community, it's really hard to forgive. So you mu chop la, you ta la cha, you what you jeneng bong jin mo, and then le shay you te oh tu neng na ji tu neng pay, ne ji sa mun da na. And there is no way for redemption. Bây chỉ cho kỹ đồ là tất cả là quan hình giống à. Thế chỉ ta là thổ bây cho cơ na. Muốn nhau hồ cho tu thế chân sai mong nói muốn nhau hồ. You cho cơ là chỉ muốn là tôi sai you cho you chiến đánh sao. And then the community, there is no connection to the community. Our Hmong community doesn't do anything to go in to help establish relationships with the men and the women who are in prison, to help them grow and change, so that when they come out of prison or jail, that they have changed, to help them grow. And so, giờ này chỉ một ba lời thổ lời cho cơ hả nó, chỉ này thổ lời tự lo, anh này sao thế? Oh, này tất cả là quan hệ trong thế, tất nhiên này tất chỉ tao ba nửa quan hệ trong này. So thầu cũng muốn nhau họ về thằng đó cũng mà xã hội ô yếm Hmong là giàu quá chả cũng mà bón gió tê mỏ Hmong bón gióจะเพลงHmong bó xã hội ô cũng nè cũng chỉ làไปตัวเขาถึงตัวcũng mà mu khe cũng tụi khen song đấm Hmong theo từng đấm Hmong but right now bây mua cái tu luyện sai luyện nhau họ prison cho cái tại sao nó they're thirsty là support some Hmong là support cho làตัวเขาถึงตัวแต่สิจุ่มมันถึงมูเขามุกแค่กี่ใจมุกแค่เลยแต่โอ้เป็นHmong choเลยเนาะเจ้ากูยิ่งพอแต่ละส่ง到นั่นตัวแรงตัวจะHmong organizationเนาะแต่สิจุ่มมันถึงเตะเลยนะแต่โอ้เป็น support แต่ส่ง到Hmongเลยจ้าอย่าง到Hmongเลยจ้าเป็นสับเกิดจะกี่ใจเนาะถอดไปแต่ละไปแต่พอแต่ไปยังHmongแต่สิจุ่มมันถึงมูเขามูดอลลาร์ท่าchị lấy nhau họ chị lấy chùa Dominica tết cho mù chơi, là chị tết cho chị ý ở lấy cũ, thầu của support some Hmong chị cũ mù về library mù check out phong tới Tragic Mountains, thầu của từ phong tới cũng mà, bảo ô, bu thầu bên Hmong nhau này nọ, bên Hmong cho này chả, bên chỉ bên số tết lọ mà là cho đâu một tết tiền nữa, and then cũng thiệt tối tụi Hmong lầu nửa lọ khe của nửa mà là bác khe song đấm Hmong theo nhận đấm Hmong đồ cũ, đó là chỉ lên đó chỉ thầu cũ trở lúa cũ chỉ bó xả, chỉ cũ thế chỉ bón chơi tê kế nó, đó là cũ lâu ra cũ bó xả, cũ thế bón chơi cũ thế lọt hay cũ tụ khen, but right now in there, the men and the women, there is nothing for them in there, and then we just expect them to come out here and say, oh. Now you're free. Come back and be part of the community, but there is no established relationship for them in there. And in the community, we have to provide resources for them when they get out, because when they get out, we want them to be successful, to be Ningjong. But there is nothing there. There is little resources for that. So it's hard for us to consider them a part of the community and expect them to be part of the community when they are not welcomed or there is no avenue for them to be a part of the community. So that's something that I kind of see as a problem.
Thank you. Liana, can you just continue?
Can I go last?
Oh, sure.
She wants to go last. Would love to go next. First of all, before I said what I'm going to say, I want to make this, how do you say this? Cú tuần sai hay đó cú na hay tia, cú tuần sai nữ single. Chỉ nữ hay đó cú hay tia, nè, cú cho phong dừa hay đó cú hay tia. Lúc Hmong National Development, it's all about Hmong men bashing. So what are you gonna do about it? Since you're gonna go there and do exactly what they say you're going to be doing. And so here's for her. Today is not going to be a Hmong man bashing day. I'm saving that for my son and my husband. Okay. So the dilemma. I think that, I shared earlier that, what I love about our culture is our clan system. I'm having a real hard time with this. If I put this on, I can read, but then I can't see people. Okay. So the same clan system that helps to really keep us, operational as a community is also impeded, some of our progress. As I said before, I consider our system to be a kind of a double-edged sword, because like everything else, our culture is determined by us, right, humans, and of course there is flaws. But one of the aspects that did the most damage to the Hmong people as a community or a group of people is the fact that Hmong women and girls are considered secondary citizens. And you can argue with me on this one, but I think you see that every day. And I'm not saying that this only happens in our community, okay? Now, in the Hmong community, in the Hmong culture, a woman, ituneche, first belonged to her father, then to her husband, then to her son. Without these men in her life, she is nothing. She doesn't exist. A woman can be seen, but not heard, and she's easily replaceable. When her clan name change, for example, when she get married, her commitment goes to the new clan. If she remarried, then it's the third, the commitment go to the third clan. Whatever clan that she's married into, that's where she commit herself. I want to share a true testament to this dilemma is one of our Hmong expression that says, but 9 stars are not as bright as the moon, and 9 daughters are not as good as a son. How sad is that? Very, very sad. 9 daughters are not worth as much as a son. All these compounded with our bride price practice serve to keep women as subservient. If we want to elevate the status of our community, we must be willing to reevaluate our practices. And mind you, I don't say culture, I said practices, because there's a fine line between culture and practices, okay? And we must make constructive changes. I'm going to name a few. The bride price, as I mentioned before, polygamy, underage marriage, and not to mention international marriage, which many times it's illegal. And so I'm going to stop there and, okay.
Okay, so is my mic on? Okay, so this is a very passionate subject for me, so I'm glad that you all are here. As you all know, I've been, many of you who know me, I've been in this work for a long time. I started doing gender justice work when I was about 14 years old. And at that time, there were a lot of Hmong girls who were basically just kind of going out of town for fun, having, and some of them would I would keep some of them at my dorm room so that they didn't have to sleep out in the streets or in hotel rooms with a bunch of folks that they didn't know. And so my work started when I was really young. It's been almost 20 years, and I can tell you all that things have changed, but things have not changed for the Hmong community. And so what Sue was talking about, we've made great strides, but today we're really here, I'm really here to talk about the things that we haven't done so well at. And that is one of the, how many of you, raise your hand, know somebody who's married somebody from overseas? Okay, you look around, it impacts. How many of you have somebody in your family who is engaged in these marriages or relationships overseas? Okay. As you all know, this is a big and huge issue in the Hmong community. It's called abusive international marriages. There are many components that are abusive about this practice. And Bo's question is about the moral dilemma. Why is abusive international marriage a moral dilemma for Hmong people? And I can tell you a story. And you all can tell me the connector of this story. A Hmong woman in California pretty much lost everything. She had properties, and she pretty much lost all her money because one day she looked at her equity in her home, and it was all gone. And her husband was spending months on end in Laos and was telling her that he had a project that he was working on. And this family has, she's witnessed domestic violence. She's a victim of domestic violence. And she could not stop him from leaving. And this has been happening for a few years. I go to Laos, and there's a young girl. Was 13 years old. She's living about maybe a couple cities away from her family. She's 13 years old. And the reason she's no longer living with her family and she's living in this village with his family is because she became a bride, or she married somebody from Hmong American from the US. The problem with that is that she doesn't know if he's going to come back and do paperwork and fiancé paperwork to get her over or not. So she's kind of in limbo, not in school, just living with strangers because she only met this guy about 2 weeks and they got married. Unfortunately, this guy's a lot older and she's only 13. Third moral dilemma of this story is there are teens and children and young people who in the US are feeling neglected, who don't have parents to go to ask for help, and they are too witnesses of this dilemma. There's sexual assault, there's domestic violence. I know that a lot of Hmong people don't want to hear this, but I can tell you that as somebody who works in this field, that these are the stories that come often. What is the connector? The connector is Hmong Americans. Whether it is Hmong American women or Hmong American men, it is a connector. And they share one person, and that person is the Hmong American person who is the husband of the family here, the father of the children here, and the new husband of the new bride. So what is the moral dilemma for us? The moral dilemma of abusive international marriage is that there used to be a system of accountability for Hmong people. So when this system has been intact for maybe hundreds of years, when there's an issue in a family, you have people to go to. If, in fact, most of the people that you can go to for accountability are practicing abusive international marriage, who do you go to? So if the daughter-in-law wants to report the son to the father, but the father has a bride overseas, who do you go to? You go to the grandfather or the great-grandfather. If they're practicing it, who do you take this issue to? Then you take it to the clan system. They're practicing it, so who do you take it to? So the reason why this is a moral dilemma for Hmong people is that there is no system of accountability. And the reason why a lot of Hmong people don't like what I have to say is because I agree to accountability, but accountability cannot look like what it's been looking on Facebook, this YouTube with the knife thing. We'll have a conversation about that. And then, yes, come to my session after this. We'll talk about accountability. The other piece about this moral dilemma is, when did grandfathers, uncles see grandchildren as wives? That is a moral dilemma for you all. When did grandmothers see grandchildren as husbands? This is sickening. When I'm in Southeast Asia, they suspect me, I suspect them, because nobody knows why the elders are there. If you look at a grandchild who's like 12 and you're like, that could be my bride, what happened? This is the moral dilemma of Hmong people. If that is a child. And so, the moral dilemma. There's increase in domestic violence. There's increase in sexual assault of children. So these are things that we're not talking about. So when you talk about moral dilemmas of Hmong people, I'm telling you, abusive international marriage, whether you're practicing it, you're condoning it, or you're thinking about it, it is wrong. Yes, come to my session. I'm really passionate about this. And I wanted to wake you all up because, there's a moral conversation here. Come have it with me. My session is after this. The other thing is that I wanted to talk to you all about, how many of you have been hearing about Mike Browns and Black Lives Matter and things like that? Okay. One of the things that I talked to Bo about that we should talk about is, how are we going to make sure that other people's lives matter too? And that caring for other people doesn't necessarily mean that you don't care about yourself. The reason it's because there's so many Hmong people who benefit from such great things that Black people have done in this country. Okay? So
ส่วนต่อมาเป๊ะจะตัวล้อติดนอเทียเป๊ะจะเราเทีย even จะตัวจักติดนอเราจะเข้าใจเทียวิลิจามHmong people should care about black people or วิลิจามHmong people อยู่จุดต้องคิดซะเราจะให้นั่งดู It is because you are living and experiencing and you are basically like getting to harvest all of the goods that they've done in their sacrifices, and you walk around as if their lives don't matter. And the reason why this is such an important conversation and what one of the things that the moral dilemma of this is, you cannot turn a blind eye to people who've sacrificed their whole lives so that you can live better. And that's not going to be in my next session, but yeah, and I'm going to talk more about that after this.
So thank you for that. I think I wanted to go last because I knew that with this conversation, this question is pretty much loaded, and I didn't want to repeat something over and over and over again. So I too am very passionate about my topic that I want to talk about. So in a way for me to manage that, I'm going to talk about my work experience and experience all combined together. And so the moral dilemma is for the Hmong community, yeah? What I come up with is, when we're talking about gender dysphoria within our community, the question is, do we want our Hmong children to be happy and healthy? That's moral dilemma number one. Moral dilemma number two is we should ask ourselves whether a people should become victims of oppressive values within a culture, or whether a culture should adapt to serve the people. And those are the two moral dilemmas that I see all the time when I'm working with gender dysphoria, okay? And so what are the common misconceptions about children in our community that has gender dysphoria? The most common is that gender dysphoria does not exist in our Hmong culture, okay? And that one kind of ties right into the second one, which would be that gender dysphoria is a cultural choice, and it's not bound by any biological or emotional makeup of the individual. So those two things kind of work in a vicious cycle, okay? And the end result with those two things working is denial, unfortunately. And that equates to the invisibility of Hmong children who have gender dysphoria. And I hope that makes sense. And if it does not make sense, please raise your hand and I can clarify, or come approach me later. And other misconceptions of children with gender dysphoria is that they're cognitively abnormal, and that is a misconception. There's a lot of people who are within the LGBTQ community that are really high function individuals, even with or without the support of family and some friends. Another one is gender dysphoria will be and can be controlled by cultural and social pressures so that it cannot be expressed. And so I've met some stories with family members coming to me, you know, when they had the family, the clan meeting with regards to their child, total denial. But when the child seeks mental health services and the family comes and participates in family therapy, only there in that private space would the dad and the mom admit that I do understand that my child is like this. He or she has been like this from a very young age, and I've just been trying to control it because in our culture, it does not exist. And so let's take a second. And it's very subtle. If we don't listen to that real carefully, I know my child has always been like this. But in our culture, it does not exist. So then, right in that, that's the dynamics of those two things working together, is the denial of the Hmong culture with regards to gender dysphoria existing. Does that make sense? Okay. So there are other common misconceptions here. That the family clan will never accept the child with gender dysphoria. So let's put out one thing. I love my culture unconditionally, but there are some things in there that I'm uncomfortable with. And one of that is that our culture is so shame-based, okay? So that's good that you all agree with me, or at least some of you. So that's the shame-based thing, and how it interplays with this is that the parents and the families will say, yeah, we know that our sibling is like this. I know that my child is like that. And I know that my child is like this. But, so my family, either from the mom's side or the dad's side, is not going to accept this child. Thus, therefore, this child either suppresses their health and well-being, or they get kicked out. And that's all for the sake of a culture that does not change to serve the people. Thank you. Other things that come up in conversation is that parents are saying, yeah, but let your and that's to deny the fact that people can change. I personally don't believe in that, because I see people who publicly denies that gender dysphoria exists, but in private they say, I totally agree with you, you know? And so when you look at that, then you have to ask yourself, what's making people do this? You know? How come these individuals, when they come report their true facts to me, they feel a sense of release and relief and understanding? But now when they leave my office, then they feel like they're automatically within a culture that oppresses and suppresses their true beliefs. So what is it about our culture? And how do we modify that? So that's another thing, is the denial that even the elders can't understand, when in true fact, I've had grandmas and grandpas tell me that I do understand this. And I accept my child, but I'm just afraid that the clan won't. And so that's the interplay in which our community is affected with gender dysphoria. I see a hand up over there. Gender dysphoria, it's the clinical term that psychologists use in the DSM-5, that an individual born of unbiological gender, when they mature and when they grow in their process of development, depending on their age, they don't identify with that assigned gender. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it doesn't matter which end of the spectrum of the binary belief you are on. And we'll talk about the spectrum thing in a little bit.
Yeah. Great.
And so those are pretty much it, you know. It's like your law, okay? Parents being afraid that your law you accept the minua, and the parents being afraid that the other clan members aren't going to accept the family, and so they have to exclude the child. And the child is not being stubborn. The child is just being truthful and honest and genuine with their parents. So it's not that the child is not going to change, but for the child to be suppressed, it's going to affect them in a negative way, okay? And a lot of this comes to a high rates of suicide. And goes into all these other things that are negative for the individual. And so that's why the person that's experiencing gender dysphoria does not want to revert back to the oppressive values, because it works against who they are, the very fiber of who they are as a person. So then is the clash. One person, the child, wants to be genuine with the rest of the world, and the rest of the world saying, no, we don't understand that publicly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I know our session is wrapping up, so I want to just say, you know, the reason why we wanted to really talk about these moral dilemmas for our community is, you know, that as a, well, we think we're a big community, but also in the scope of things, we're a small community, right? And if we really want to really tap into the full potential of our community, it means that we have to create ways in which everyone feels like they're part of this community. So, ya de bé cho mi tu mi nhua lỡ họ lòng họ ya de bé mua cho tới mình nó thầu cơ ít cho chừng hai tiền lỡ cha mua anh nên mong này ya cho khỏi tiền tây ya chỉ dùng so nếu theo li ya họ hai tiền có bé cho cả là sa hai tiền ya anh nên mong này ya đã chỉ bé yêu khờ khó tư theo li chỉ nhau theo bé yêu li cha ya tiền tu tư nếu mua cái chơi yêu là ba mong nè còn nên thiệt đâu cái này tất cả lòng cả đâu chỉ mình hay tiệt sai hay tiệt mong chỉ cho tụi nên nó nè, right? Bây giờ ít ba bây giờ nó mà ít tụi tức lòng chỉ ít tụi. So I'm not talking about personal empowerment because I know everybody in this room is personally empowered. You feel you are making a difference. You are taking a stand for yourself, and you are here. And you get to make decisions about your life. But I'm talking about systemic practices in our community that either hinder or excludes people from feeling like they are able to really embrace their full Hmong identity. And as I talk to so many young Hmong people, I hear more and more often the things that they're shameful about, right? Not necessarily. Yes, when you think about a historical perspective, you have a lot of pride, but when you talk about the practices that are occurring in families, in relationships, and then in how they are able to contribute into the community, there are many more who feel like this is problematic, right? So as we move forward, I want to close and ask the panelists for a final thought about what advice do you have for individuals and leaders in this room to go back and as they do their work, how do we propel our community forward towards achieving our full potential, knowing that we have these challenges in our communities and that we often don't see the kinds of leaders that we are talking about who have had these kinds of life experiences represented up here. So make this your closing remark.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes. I'm a quick talker, so I'll try to get as much as I can get in here. So I think that one of the things that we didn't talk about was leadership. What I'm seeing out here is that, yeah, there's a lot of older leadership, but the new wave of leadership from Hmong people that I'm seeing is led by queer. For many of those who don't understand that terminology, it is people who identify as gay, lesbian, straight, transgender, unisex, whatever. There's a whole umbrella. It's too much to, it's more complicated than that. And so I hope that we also have more workshops that we can really go into that. I see a lot of young women-led initiatives, and leadership that I'm seeing in Hmong community is that it is not just one person. It is actually a group of people trying to make a change. There's lots of groups throughout the world, Hmong-led groups who are doing these things. If you are interested, just talk to me after this. What are some problems, some ways that you all can go back and create change? The one thing, I've been young one time in my life, and one of the things I'd like to tell you all as young people is it's not enough that you're successful. That doesn't mean anything for your community. If you make it out and it's only you, the rest of your community, many of them are still behind and suffering. So it is not enough for you to move forward in your life only. That means come back and work for your community. That means come back. And the other piece about leadership and moving forward is accountability. Okay? Accountability is not male bashing. It is accountability. It just so happens to be that many of those who are in leadership positions, through whatever reasons, happen to be recognized, those who are recognized as leaders in our community often are men. So when you hold men accountable, that does not mean you're male bashing. It just means you're holding leadership accountable, and that's okay. Okay, last thing. If you want to know what that looks like, I'm really creative. We'll talk about it after this.
Okay, you took a lot of time, so everybody else gets 30 seconds.
Cú sa hai tia wa nena hai cho leaders ya cú bỏ tao hai tia Hmong women have made great strides in the last 40 years, more so than any time in Hmong known history. Okay? And guess what? This momentum is nowhere near its peak. So you go, girl. Okay, young Hmong women are taking advantage of opportunities available to them as if there's no tomorrow. Yeah. Okay? And yes, I see emerging Hmong women leaders in our community in various fields, tackling various issues, and they are being recognized for their skills and talents. The sad truth again here is that these women leaders will be accepted by the mainstream society way before our own people will even acknowledge them. And that is the sad truth. So here's a question for us as a community that wants to advance our people, if that is where we are going. Will you invest in your daughter in the same way you would invest in your son if the two are equally successful? Okay? We as a community, our group of people, still take our daughters and women for granted, and yet we expected their total loyalty without question. It's time to turn the tide and put our money where our mouth is. All right? We are seeing more and more elderly parents living and caring for by their daughters in another clan's house. How sad is that? Okay? And we failed to recognize that, you know, our system no longer works. It needs to change. And I just wanted to say that, you know, perhaps one way for us to move ahead as a community should begin with how we recognize leaders. Perhaps it is time to change the thinking that instead of when we think about leaders, instead of who, we should think what. In this way, then it will, we will start looking at what are people doing that will, you know, that will help the community. Not what people have done in the past, but what are people doing today that are worth recognizing. Okay.
So closing statements. Gender dysphoria is a spectrum, okay? So the common belief, and especially in our Hmong community, is that you're either male or female. And those things are especially true, and we hold on to that because physiologically, that's what we see. But what the person, the driver of what we see, the person inside the body, what they're experiencing could be anywhere in between the two binaries. So in the LGBTQ community, when we talk about spectrum of gender identity or a spectrum of sexual orientation, that's what we're talking about, okay? It's the way in which you experience yourself, okay? So with that, the question comes, what kind of leaderships? One of the questions was, where do I see leadership popping up in our community? And I think leadership comes from the minority of the individuals who are willing to advocate for the health and well-being of all people within their community. Okay. And I said to you all in the beginning, what I value most about my community is the future of my community. So going on forward, as leaders and in your own professions or whatever you do in your own community, you just have to ask yourself a couple questions. What type of leader do I want to be? The leader that includes all people in my community, or a leader that only provides for some people in our community? And whichever way you choose, it's your choice. But some choices affect bigger lives and much more people's lives than others. So, you know, and I always tend to lean on that. I believe that even if individuals who don't identify with everything that I identify with or value everything that I value, they do have a skill set. But in my life, I choose to be the type of leader that is able to love all members in my community.
Thank you. John?
Thank you. So for me, whenever I talk to young people, they don't see themselves as leaders. They always say, oh, you know, they say, oh, that's not right. You know, it's not a monarchy where your power is passed on to the next person and you wait till the person dies. That's not right. You know, young people, you all here, you're educated, and even the older people. You know, begin to see yourself as a leader. Speak up. Talk about it. Because that's the only way change comes about. You know, don't just sit there and accept what it is, things that you know that are not right. If you see your mom or your dad not doing something right, you can still respect them and talk to them, have a discussion, and point out what's not right, what you don't like. You know, there's a way to go about it respectfully. Just because you speak up does not mean that you are not being respectful to your parents. And like if you see your parents, they're going to the club more than you, they're going to the bars more than you, then there is a problem. And there's alcohol involved in everything. But we got to speak up about these things. Because we all are a part of the community. Whether you're LGBT, whether you are somebody who's been incarcerated, or you married outside your race, or you are a woman. We got to include everybody because Ilu community everybody. So it's not, we're not serving our community. We got to see that when that we're making our daughters better. We're making our future mothers better. And we're making our whole community stronger. So, we got to reevaluate the things that we're doing in the past and don't just continue doing them because, oh, my grandpa has continued to do this in the past and we've always done this, so let's just continue doing it. Think about it. You're smart now. You can think for yourself. Think critically about it. Why do we do these things? Ask yourself that. And if it doesn't make sense, let's see, can we change? Let's have a discussion. Can we change this so that it includes everybody, the mothers and the sisters? Because if we don't include everybody, it's not a community. And as for leadership, leaders, they represent the people. They represent us, and the only reason why leaders have power is because of the people. Us, we give them power. And if they're not serving us, we can have a discussion with them, ask them to listen to us and change, or else ask them to step down. Because if they're not serving us no more, they're no longer our leaders. So that's how we can create change in our community and affect leadership.
Thank you. So I want to really thank our panelists for talking about some very difficult issues in our communities, but really just end with the notion that our past is really an opportunity to learn and reflect, but change is really only possible in the future, right? And that we all control that destination. And you all heard statistics and things. Overwhelmingly, our population is young. And so it really matters what all of you have to say and what kinds of values and practices you think should be a part of our community. So thanks very much, and I hope that you can stick around and talk to our panelists, but I want to turn it back to the MCs.
Panelists, thank you. We will excuse you guys now if you guys want to get off the stage. Okay. Thank you. Let's give them another. Thank you.